What's up? Good evening. You're listening to another episode of Taking the Over with Billy Gunn. And I am your host, Billy Gunn, on this, the official sports wagering podcast of Boot Crew Media. And by the way, want to talk to y'all real quick about Royal Honda. It's a great time to be at Royal Honda, where they have 80 pre-owned cars available for immediate delivery and 100 new cars, like the 2022 Honda Pilot EXL, Honda's flagship SUV. Taking the Over is driven and powered by Royal Honda, and Royal Honda is located at 5600 Veterans Boulevard in Metairie. Visit royalhonda.com to find your new car today. And by the way, I'm not the math guy. My co-host T, who's with us tonight, is the math guy. He's the numbers guy on this shenanigan. But T, I'm doing some math here. They got 100 new cars. They got 80 pre-owned cars. That's 180 cars.
Math checks out. Spot on.
Right? That's 180 cars at Royal Honda. Bro, I was at my buddy's dealership the other day. They had like 5 cars.
There's a shortage. Chip shortage.
COVID took out cars. Big time. It's bad on cars. Bad on car availability. Royal Honda, royalhonda.com. God bless Royal Honda. Thank Royal Honda for sponsoring, for being the first ever sponsor of Taking the Over. And we couldn't be happier with Royal Honda. And we couldn't be happier to have our guest with us tonight. Man, when we first came over to Boot Crew Media, T was in the Zoom room for the negotiation. He was there. And I talked to Justin and I talked to Lala, right? And one of the first things I said when we were coming over to the first meeting we had with Boot Crew Media, I said, I just want to meet Rosvoglou. I said, I just want to meet Rosvoglou. Can I meet Rosvoglou? And I thought, like, everybody chuckled, yeah. You know, and we've done the show a couple times, and I was like, man, let's reach out to Rosvoglou. Because our guest tonight, Chris Rosvoglou, he is my favorite, like, Saints reporter, Saints Twitter presence when it comes to information and analysis, just straightforward. I mean, I started watching this guy a long time ago, have been a big fan, and we've had opportunities. We're going to have opportunities to have amazing guests on this show, and this is part of it. Last week we had Hislop, an amazing guest. This week we've got Chris Rosvoglou, Saints Report, at Rosvoglou Report on Twitter. Chris, welcome to Taking the Over. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I don't know how I kind of follow that up after that. I really appreciate it, guys. And yeah, when you guys hit me up, I love doing podcasts. I love people having me on podcasts. I just like to chat about things. Obviously, I love talking Saints, but I also love going on other people's shows, and they have different, kind of spins to things and talk about different subjects. And I love to kind of jump into that too. But you guys do great work. Obviously, I love the Boot Crew Media family, so I'm thrilled to be on.
Well, dude, I mean, one thing that we've always done on this show, it's weird. Our show's kind of niche, right? I don't know how familiar you are with Taking the Over. So you're probably not very familiar with Taking the Over. So I'm all the more glad you came on. But we're a gambling show, right? But we're kind of niche in that we're like New Orleans area, right? And then T's not, but he's a New Orleans fan. He's a fan of the Saints. We're all ridiculous Saints fans. My former network and my former show, my first podcasting experience was I was on a Saints podcast for many years, over the years, and I love talking about the Saints, but it's like Saints talk, there's just so many good people at it, there's so many good presences like in Saints podcasting. Like I don't even want to jump into those waters. That's why I like to, and plus I'm such a degenerate. I just love gambling, but there's guys like you that are out there just like, I mean, let's say you're just a machine. You're good at it. You're not like look, you do. It's hard to tell. You remind me like a political science professor I had in college. Like you could never figure out what he was. Like everybody was like, oh, is he a Republican? Is he a Democrat? Is he conservative? Like we could never tell because his job was to teach us about, the politics or whatever. You're very guarded with your opinions. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think the one thing I do, and I think it's important, It's not about sheltering like how I feel about certain topics, because I think over time people will catch on Twitter. From time to time, I'll give my stance on stuff, but I know that a lot of, especially like in today's society, I know that everything's stressful. Like work can be stressful, even hanging out with friends anymore. It feels like people just constantly bashing over opinions. I want to be kind of an escape for some people. That doesn't mean that I'm going to ignore what's going on, because that would just be wrong. But I like for, if people are having a bad day or people don't want to hear about a certain thing and they just want to talk about football, they want to talk about Saints, I like to kind of be that outlet if I can. So yeah, I think for some regard, I kind of keep things close to the vest. And I try to just focus on things that personally make me happy. And it's also not even in terms of just guarding opinion. It's more so for my own sake too. I feel like if I just focused on so many other things going on, I would almost weigh myself down. So I kind of try to focus on what makes me happy, whether it's Saint stuff, whether it's, reading comic books or something.
Right.
So I'm a pretty nerdy guy, but that's just what I kind of like to do.
That's what like gambling is for me. Like gambling in sports, it's like getting away from the real world.
It's the
It's like
purest
getting
form
away
of
from-
entertainment, and we've said it every episode.
Yeah, we see it every week. Like I like to get away from the heavy stuff. Like there's war and all this. Well, dude, it's a known fact. I'm a medical cannabis patient here in the state of Louisiana. So because of doctor's orders, I like to take the edibles at night, right? Dude, last night it was Mardi Gras yesterday, right? Big deal, Mardi Gras. The Rex and Comus ball is on public television on cable. I decided to take some edibles and watch that. But first, I start watching the State of the Union address. And then my edibles kicked in. It was the most uncomfortable experience in the world. And look, I'm not like, this is not about Republicans, Democrats. This is not, because we don't get into politics on this show, right? All of them, every politician in the room looked like a damn Star Wars villain. You know what I mean? They look like a Sith. They all look like Sith.
Like a Jedi Republic.
Yeah, it was just scary. I mean, because they're all like 85 years old, and they've been in these positions, and it was so cynical. I was really stoned, and I was so cynical. And I was like, oh, let me flip over to this Comus Rex thing to get my mind up, because I was just trying to get to like 9 o'clock to watch the Lakers and Dallas, and if I can just get back to sports, everything's gonna be okay, dude. And then that Rex Comus thing came on. That was terrifying. Have you seen the dancing heads?
I have not.
Dancing
Now I
heads.
feel like I almost have to though.
It's on my Twitter right now. I recorded it and posted it. It's the dude. Well, it's the Rex and Comus. It's creepy oldness, like pre-Civil War historic, weird, fucked up shit. And it's scary. And I was like, oh my God. And then like I flipped over to basketball and I was like, panic attack subsided.
I just looked at your Twitter. Dear God.
Yeah, dude. I thought I was watching the State of the Union address, and it felt like I was watching like lizard people, on both sides of the aisle. And then I flip over to the Comus Rex, and then they got the dancing. There's at least like 2 satanic goats out there, which is crazy. If you're gonna have a crazy old school, eyes wide shut party, you got to have like people in satanic dancing goat heads.
It's on the checklist.
They know how to party. I don't know, man. It's freaky stuff. Anyway, we got you here, Chris. We want to talk about the Saints. You got time to talk about the Saints?
Absolutely.
Because I really value your opinion. And look, I'm going to do a thing tonight where I want to try and get your opinion, because there is a gray area. I mean, you're like a legit journalist in my eyes, right? And it's like, how much is opinion? How much is just like reporting? Like, I consider myself to be a personality, and there's other people out there that go, I'm a personality, so I can say stupid shit, right? I'm not a reporter. I'm a personality. I'm going to say ridiculousness. So let's talk about the Saints. Let's talk about the Saints from a gambling perspective. All right. And as we get into our Saints talks, like I have some conversations that I've wanted to have with you, like about the Saints and like your knowledge of the Saints. Like, when did you become a Saints fan? Because you're not from the New Orleans area, are you?
No, I'm not. So I tell everyone it actually started in 2006 because I wasn't a football fan. growing up. I was actually a big baseball fan, and because I'm from New York, I grew up a Yankee fan. Obviously, I was just like obsessed with Derek Jeter. But when you guys opened up the Dome again, I actually was watching that game with my dad. And funny enough, I was watching that first because as a kid, what do you think of? You kind of think of guys like Michael Vick. You're like, oh, I want to watch him on TV. But then I start watching. I'm like, okay, this crowd is awesome. Yeah. This team looks pretty awesome. Obviously, I didn't know the circumstances and the magnitude of the situation growing up at the time. And then from there on out, I just kept watching and watching and watching, and then it kept growing and growing. And obviously, I've just stuck with it since. But that's really where it started for me. And the funny thing is, as soon as I started doing that and watching the Saints, my love for baseball started dying completely. Although that's another topic for a different sport.
Your love for baseball is about to be 12 feet under here.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's kind of how it started for me.
So you're like one of your first games, one of your big experiences was watching the return game, the Gleason game.
Yep, that was actually the first game that I felt like fully invested watching them.
Dude, I got a crazy story for that game. So I was, I think it was in undergrad or grad school, I can't remember. And I came down to Poydras Street, and I was actually staying on a hotel on Poydras Street for like part of work business type thing. And I came down during the day on that Monday, it was a Monday, and kind of partied and met some friends and family, but like I didn't have tickets to the game. So all my friends and they all went in the game. And then I was driving to go watch the game at a buddy of mine that lived like out in Metairie or Kenner. So I'm leaving like the Dome area and going out to Jefferson Parish during the first quarter. So I missed the Gleason block because I'm driving in my truck. But the streets of New Orleans in the interstate during that, like as I was driving out to the suburbs, were as fucking vacant. It was like tumbleweeds, dude. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I've never seen anything like it since. It's like every soul, except for me, big dumbass, was watching that game. Nobody was about. Nobody was anywhere. And it was a pivotal moment. That's awesome. So like you saw an awesome event. We have a lot of fans that are European fans or UK fans of the Saints. And usually it's like, yeah, they saw some kind of awesome experience with like Breeze or, like it. And it's cool because it's a generation of Saints fans that have come in. Like I was born in like 79. Right. And so I had like a little bit of Aints, John Fourcade, Bobby Hebert. Just when I remember when we got to the playoffs for the first time and then got spanked by the Vikings, you know what I mean? But like the success we've had in these last several years, it's, fandom's weird and life is weird and everything's generational. It's like you guys have mostly known this crazy redemption story, but there was a lot of bullshit in front of it, right? Just a lot of bad years, bad ownership, pre-Benson, pre-Mr. Tom, buying the team. What do you think? Like, do you see we've had the big regime change with Peyton gone? I mean, do you see good days ahead, bad days ahead, and different days ahead? Do you think it's going to be a return to the times of before Peyton? What do you think is going to happen?
I feel like I'm giving like the politically correct answer, but like I really have to like wait and see. And the reason I say that is, and I say it often on my podcast, is there's a lot of teams when they make coaching changes that you're going to give them time. Like you're going to give them a year or two to figure it out. And I think the Saints are like the exception, right? Because this isn't a team that, if I look at their roster, they shouldn't be in a rebuilding phase. And the division right now, I mean, just look around there. Falcons are in trouble. Buccaneers obviously could go back to the bottom without Brady. Panthers, they got issues to figure out all over the field. So I look at division being weak. I look at them keeping this whole continuity thing. If you're going to go with the continuity route, you got to win me. I know this seems like a relatively weird, win total to pick, but you got to get me at least 9 wins next season. I know that, we'd see what happens. It's only March, but I would say a 6 to 7 out of 10 level confidence in the fact that I still think they're going to be a really competitive team. I think that a lot of people make, stories about the defense and whether or not it's going to be okay now that Dennis Allen's the coach. And now you have co-defensive coordinators, almost like co-managers from the office. But I think that they'll figure that side of the ball out. And I still have my big time concerns about the offense, but I almost look at it as I don't think the offense can be worse than they were last year. And if they are, then, obviously God help us all watching these games, but I do think that they will be fine for now. I'm not ready to kind of hit that panic button about them going down in the dumps, because I think that even though Sean Payton is gone. I think the Saints have learned now what it takes to be a consistent winner. And I think those are values that kind of carry on for a while. Even if Dennis Allen's not the answer, Mickey Loomis, Jeff Ireland, Kai Harley, those guys know what it's going to take to be a winning organization for several years, not just one good year. So I'm not that worried. If anything, my biggest concern is who's at wide receiver, who's at quarterback, that type of stuff. But I still think that the Saints are a competitive team. I would expect them to be in the thick of things in terms of being somewhere floating in that playoff picture. But again, I could be wrong, but I am very interested to see how that first year goes with Dennis Allen, because I'm not going to cut him slack the way I would cut, let's say, a Doug Peterson in Jacksonville or coaches like that.
See, I feel like the one thing that we've done successfully in this offseason of turmoil with Coach Sean Payton leaving is we've kept it as continuous as we could, right? I mean, at the end of the day, did we lose anybody else off the staff? And
they made some minor moves here and there.
Minor moves, but
nothing notable.
Promoting DA to head coach, I think he's earned it. To me, it's the most continuous thing to do. Keeping Carmichael. I mean, like, this is as close as we could be to a Sean Payton type of deal when you look at it personnel-wise. We could not physically be more adjacent to Sean Payton style than what we've ended up with.
I think,
and ultimately bringing in other people wouldn't have done that.
I think it's nice to have the continuity, but it's also nice, and as we've seen recently, the offense has been stagnant and over-reliant on a few things, in my opinion. It's like screen passes are a big piece. It's almost nice to have Sean leaving, to see a new person in charge and maybe tweak a successful offensive scheme with minor things to freshen it up. Because we've seen kind of the same exact game plan for the past few years. And of course, teams are figuring it out and it's become stagnant. So I think there's an added benefit in getting a refresher without losing the core pieces.
I agree, man. I agree. And we're pulling our cap. We're in the midst of cap magic season. Right.
I see cap hell on Twitter one more time.
Those are, and even like the gospel of the Saints cap magic has reached everybody. Even the dum-dums are getting it. You know what I mean? Like the people that are in like Jacksonville, Florida, and they're like, oh, like they're even going, okay, yeah, the Saints do this every year. They okey doke us on the salary cap. It's beautiful. I mean, and I see Chris reporting it. I'm like, thank God. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort, man. Let me ask you this. God's
work. Sharing the
you're
gospel
doing the Lord's work, bro. I'm on the Jameis train. Okay? Like, I'm on the Jameis train. I'm on the Jameis Winston Express. Chris, do you say choo choo too, or are you not on the Jameis train?
I'll say I got one foot on the train. I'm like looking around to see if anyone else is coming. And then if no one else is coming, I'm ready to get on the train. That's where I'm at. And so this is my thing with Jameis Winston, because funny enough, actually the other day I put out a podcast talking about how I'm totally okay with him coming back. And one of the first YouTube comments was, another Jameis hater. I was like, that's not what I said, but
yeah, I listened to that podcast that you didn't say that. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I've always been kind of a pro Jameis Winston guy. And this has been for a while. This isn't even just Saints. I always thought even in Tampa Bay, like, yes, he had flaws, but the problem was they kept magnifying his flaws instead of trying to kind of hide his flaws. And I think the Saints did a good job of hiding his flaws, but at the same time, they almost kind of hit his strengths last year. We didn't see as many explosive plays. And I think for Jameis, where I'm at is you need to be realistic. And what I mean is I would love to see Russell Wilson in a Saints uniform. I would be okay with, as annoying as he can be, I'd love to see Aaron Rodgers in a Saints uniform because I think that would make them a better team. But I don't think those guys are going to get traded because I don't know if they really feel like I'm going to be that guy that forces my way out of town, because it's a big commitment. It's one thing to kind of have all the media talking about you, about what you might do next, and you kind of get to sit there while they make up headlines. But it's another thing to finally go up to the team that did draft you and's been with you for a while and say, okay, I want out, you're going to trade me. Like, that's that next step I don't think they're going to take. So if I don't think a trade's there to be made because I'm not a Jimmy Garoppolo guy, I just don't see it. I see why people like his jawline. the quarterback aspect.
He's so handsome.
He
thinks he's handsome too. He wants him as a quarterback.
Okay, that's an over-exaggeration.
He wants him to come be the quarterback. I think it's because he's so handsome. Because there's no other reason why.
He reminds me a lot of
he's
my
not
guy
a good
Joey
quarterback.
Harrington.
He's just handsome.
I wore the Joey Harrington jersey for you today, Billy, too.
Dude, when he's got a Joey Harrington jersey from. Do you know who Joey Harrington is, Chris?
No, I'm lost here, but I appreciate it.
Underrated quarterback, got a bad rap in Detroit.
Joey Harrington was playing quarterback for the Lions when the 5th season of The Sopranos was on TV. I think that, and I want to ask your opinion on this. I'm still staying on the topic of Jameis. Like, I love Jameis. I think I'm excited. I hope he comes back. I'm of the opinion that, and this is where it gets weird. Does the rest of the league devalue him? I mean, he's an unrestricted free agent. We just assume that like he's going to stay here. And I guess we assume that because he's taken to the Saints fan base in New Orleans, and you couldn't ask for a more fan appreciative leader than Jameis. Like he's done awesome at it. But we just assume he's like, if we ask, he'll stay. I would assume, because I think he's showed what he can do last year, and I think that he has such a high ceiling that he's tapping in. He's only 28 years old now. I'd assume there's a huge market for him because there's all these teams looking for quarterbacks. And so the whole NFL is stuck on speculating about if guys who are under contract, superstars with a team are going somewhere else. Jameis Winston's an unrestricted free agent. I'd love to have him back. I think the Saints are going to try to have him back, but what if somebody throws $30 million a year at him?
You probably lose him if that's the case. I would be stunned if the Saints would match that. This is what I'll say about the whole Jameis thing, because you brought up an excellent point. I think a lot of people, and it's not even to point fingers because I don't remember like who specifically tweets it, but I know if I tweet anything about Jameis, some people are like, oh, we could get him for cheap. And I'm like, I don't think he's going to be cheap, because I think the quarterback market, regardless of who you are, it's a lucrative market. But I think I look at teams like the Steelers. I look at teams like Washington, and I know they change their name every week. So Washington Commanders, it still doesn't seem like
they're still football team to me, man.
They'll still be football team, but
I'm calling football team for the rest of my life.
Pittsburgh. I would even throw teams like Denver in the sense that, like, if some of these teams are like, all right, let's not waste our time on Rodgers because we don't know if he's going anywhere. Let's look at the free agency market. I would think that Jameis is the best choice, because your options are Jameis Winston, Teddy Bridgewater, Mitchell Trubisky, and Marcus Mariota. Those are like the main 4 quarterbacks on the market. I think Jameis is without a doubt the best option out of the 4. So I don't think that the Saints are going to easily just re-sign Jameis if it comes to March 16th. Now, if they were able to sign a deal before March 16th, then yeah, that's it. Like if they agree something under the table and before free agency starts, they got that done, then yeah, we don't have to worry about that. But I think if free agency starts, I would imagine he has more suitors. He actually did have more than the Saints interested in him last offseason. Right. It's just he felt like, hey, I spent a year here. Let me see how I can do as a starter, and then we'll reassess. Obviously, the injury threw everything, into flux, but I think that he will have a market, and I think that the Saints, for them, they're probably going to have a price on it. I wouldn't be surprised if they're willing to spend $20 million on Jameis. I think for a year or maybe 2 years, you're paying that much per year. I think you can be willing to do that, because that's not bad in today's quarterback market. Like, I think the contracts you're going to see for guys like Kyler Murray and Aaron Rodgers are going to be so big that you're like, okay, 20 mil is not terrible. So I think that's possible, but I think it's going to be very interesting. And I think they're going to have to make a decision quick, because if you don't want Jameis, okay, just understand someone will probably sign him within that first week of free agency. And if you do, then you got to act fast before other people can maybe outbid you. So I think that it's a little bit more complicated than some fans might think it is.
Don't you think he has an affinity towards New Orleans, though? He seems like the guy where he has that, like, a feeling of loyalty almost. He's buying into the culture, clearly, in social media, on the field. I feel like there's something with him. He's that kind of guy who would stay for not a huge discount, but like a quote-unquote hometown discount.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, I think Jameis is all in on the culture. I think he's all in on the fans. I think he's all in on the coaching staff too. And that's actually the good part of, keeping the coaching staff the way it is. It's okay, if Jameis stays, he doesn't have to learn anything new. He knows the terminology. I think it's how much, what's the market and how much of a discount. Like if you're telling me, I bet Jameis would stay with the Saints for, let's say, 18 million over like 22 with, let's say, a team like Washington. Okay, then I probably would agree. But if Washington, let's say, threw like 26, 27 at him and the Saints threw 17, now we're talking that's such a big difference that I don't think he would do that discount. But do I think he would maybe cut the Saints a little bit of slack, maybe like $2-3 million? I could see that. I wouldn't be surprised, because for him, it's all about the long-term thing. And I think that's the one thing he stressed when he came here and was talking about learning about Drew Brees. It wasn't just a one-year thing. It was for him to get his career back on track. Because you guys mentioned the age. It's still crazy how young he is. He's been in the league for a long time.
28 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. Like guys
seasons.
like Kenny Pickett are 24, and they're going to be a rookie. So I think it's just incredible when you think of it from that way. So I think there's a very good chance he's going to be back. Like I feel minimum 50-50, and that's me lowballing at 50-50 that I think he'll be back. But I do think that there will be a better market than people think.
What if he
I
doesn't?
hope. Hold on. I hope that he comes back. Would you agree with me, Chris? Do you also hope that he comes back?
Yeah, I think I want him back at this point regardless, because I think he's the best option in free agency, and I don't think they're going to make a trade. And I honestly wouldn't even mind if the Saints kind of doubled up and went sign Jameis, and if there's a quarterback you like in this draft, maybe even a guy in day 2 who you think you could develop, then take him. I think until you have the right answer at quarterback, or until you feel like you have the right answer at quarterback, I'm okay with you signing guys. I'm okay with you drafting guys. I'm okay with you trading for guys, because you need to get that answer. So I think regardless, I think they should sign Jameis Winston. Even if they want to draft a quarterback, I think it'd be the smart move.
I don't know. Switching gears. What are we going to do with Cesar Ruiz, man? Like, what do we do with Cesar Ruiz?
You got to hope Doug Marone's got some magic coming with him. That's what I would say. Because I think for Ruiz, and I say it every time, it's tough for me, because when they drafted him, I was very intrigued, because he was the number 1 center out of high school and the number 1 center in college. And then you move him to right guard. I probably underestimated how much of a difference that would be. But even when they move him to center, he hasn't really been that impressive. And the funniest part that Saints fans noticed was he was the only offensive lineman that played every game this year out of a stacked line with Armstead, Ramczyk, McCoy, got Pete there too. He was the one dude who played all 17 games. I don't know. I really don't know what you do with him, because the mistakes he's making are mistakes that shouldn't happen anymore. Like there are some mistakes that you make in your rookie year where it's like, okay, you're getting used to the speed, you're getting used to the power, but he's just making mental errors, and guys are just getting free runs at the quarterback. I think the Dolphins game was a perfect example of that. And I think for him, this is a make or break year. I think if he doesn't play well in camp and they reach a breaking point with him, he won't be back after next season. Obviously, he will be there for 2022, but I think he's entering a make or break point, which is sad, because I think this is a player who the Saints actually had a really nice vision for, and it just hasn't worked.
So let's pivot over to some Saints gambling, okay? As you know, or just gambling talk in general. And, man, I'm an NFL gambling guy. I love betting on NFL football. It's my bread and butter. Some would say that I'm good at it. T over here is also, I'd say that he is very, very, very good, above average, above the norm, above the mean, above all of the statistical data would tell you he is on record as being better than the average cat at NFL football gambling. But when the NFL's gone, it gets tough for guys like us. I've been losing money on basketball, man. Can't figure out basketball. Can't figure out NBA basketball. I'm taking, after tonight, the rest of the NBA season off to watch and observe. We've got, roughly 20 games left for every team, something like that. NBA, I've got the league pass now. Dude, the NBA is so much fun to watch. And after the reshuffling of the deck at the trade deadline, and looking at the Pelicans are headed towards it, at a minimum, being in these play-in games. You're getting to watch the Lakers crash. It's so much fun to watch. For me, I've not been all that successful at gambling at it. I've been successful at gambling at other things, but I'm always drawn back to the NFL when it comes to gambling. And so in the offseason, Chris, they have these bets called futures, right? I'm sure you're familiar now because everybody's familiar with gambling. And so I looked at some across various platforms over the last week, because they're already published, like who's going to win the Super Bowl, who's going to win the AFC, NFC divisions. And I wanted to first talk to you about The NFC South odds to win the NFC South for next season. And these odds are via Barstool, who has these. So the Bucks are the odds-on favorite at plus 140, meaning if you bet $100, you'd win 140 additional for betting on the Bucks to win the NFC South. The Saints follow them at plus 275. Vegas thinks that the Panthers would be next at plus 350, and that the Falcons would be plus 400. Now, we danced around the edges of Saints' record next year earlier, right? And without even getting specific about Saints' record, I mean, it's funny to me that the Bucks are the odds favorite. We don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. And the Bucks are experiencing perhaps a migration of talent. You've still got lawsuits perhaps coming from Antonio Brown. I wouldn't be shocked if Arian's not there by the time they kick off next year. And the Bucks are favored to win the NFC South. Chris, do you think at plus 275 the Saints are a decent bet to win the NFC South next year?
Yeah, I think that's good value. Actually, when you said the number, I was kind of surprised. I'm not surprised why the Bucks are at where they're at. And the only reason I say that is there is a lot of chatter, and it really ramped up this week, that if they can, the Buccaneers would kind of throw their hat in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. Now, I don't know if Deshaun Watson would go there, but I think that's why you're seeing people not ready to kind of jump ship on the Bucks yet, because they feel like if they can, they're going to make a run at Deshaun Watson, and Watson would fit Bruce Arians' system very well. I don't know how many games he would get suspended. He still has that legal situation going on. Obviously, I don't know how that's going to play out, but that would probably be the explanation for why the Bucks are still decent odds at 140. But I think the Saints, that's a good play for me. I look at this team, even if, let's say, they don't re-sign Jameis Winston, and if they do, that would change my opinion of them, because I think re-signing Jameis gives them, at least in my mind, another win from where I would expect them to be. And I'm lowballing it with another win, but I'm trying to play it safe there. This team, record-wise, they have a good record over the last couple of years with Taysom Hill at quarterback. And I obviously, in terms of starting quarterback, I don't view Taysom Hill as that. I think Taysom Hill is a better quarterback in terms of backup and stuff than people give him credit for. But when he's starting, I believe the Saints are like 6-3. And it's just they play a really nice team, complementary style of football. So I really don't like the Panthers. That's a team I'm completely out on. I'm not sold on Atlanta. I think Atlanta's going to have to trade Calvin Ridley. They have a $48 million cap hit for Matt Ryan, which means you're not spending any money in free agency because it's all going to your quarterback. And that's not good for a team that's trying to rebuild. So I don't really like where they're heading. I think it's kind of Saints or Bucks. And if the Bucks don't get that quarterback, the Bucks are either going Blaine Gabbert or Kyle Trask. And I think that would give the advantage to the Saints if Jameis Winston comes back. So I think the Saints are very good value. This has nothing to do with me, obviously, rooting for the team. I just think from just a logical perspective, I think that's a good number.
I do too. And I mean, I could see them win the NFC South. When let's say we run it back next year, is similar. We can't be worse off personnel-wise. We can't. Because of the injuries that we went through last year, I think that it's very, very difficult for us to be worse off personnel-wise at any point this upcoming season than we were last season. I think with the inclusion of Jameis Winston on this, like if let's say he doesn't get hurt last year and you run that back, I think the Saints probably don't win the NFC South last year, but they probably make some noise in the playoffs, and with the uncertainty of the only thing, I think the only way, I mean, if the Bucks got a Deshaun Watson, oh yeah, the Bucks are going to win the division. So at this point in time, it is one of those. It's fun when they publish these kinds of bets like this time of year because there's so much goofy uncertainty. Like you're so far off from any kind of. You haven't even had the draft yet. You haven't really had You haven't had free agency yet. You haven't gone through these periods when guys are getting cut. The first league day and whatnot. So I mean, it's just it's true gambling. It's nonsense. Wouldn't you agree, T?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have great value on the Saints pick. I'm thinking about taking that now. That's I don't think the Bucks have a good roster, right? But aren't almost their entire offense up for free agency?
Ali Marpet retired yesterday.
So I don't even like that argument that
They got 28-year-old offensive linemen retiring, dude. It's a dumpster fire. Really is.
Yeah, I don't think Atlanta's any good. And then Carolina, Matt Rule is not a good coach, in my opinion. So I don't want to rag on that guy for bringing him into it, catching strays, but I don't think that team's going to be any better. Who's going to be their quarterback? Sam Darnold again?
Oof.
If he's even under contract, I don't know his situation.
So when they traded for Sam Darnold, they made the decision to pick up his option. They owe him guaranteed money, like $22 million. And it's all guaranteed. So they got to keep him on the roster. It's whether or not he's going to be the backup or the starter.
Hey, bro,
you get Cam Newton maybe another year.
You could give Dan Campbell those 5 kids who play basketball for Indianapolis University of Pennsylvania, IUPUI. You hear about that college team that was like down to like 5 guys? They played last night against Oakland in the first round of the Horizon Valley tournament. They were minus 23.5 underdogs, plus 23.5 to them. They covered. They only lost by 11. 5 guys. You give those 5 guys to Dan Campbell, he'll teach them to be offensive linemen. I mean, so Stafford, I'm not worried about Stafford, but it begs an interesting point. T, can you pull up the MVP odds?
Sure.
Do you have them?
NFL MVP odds. I don't have them, but I can pull them up.
Oh, dude, I got them. Well, look, some of them. I mean, Jameis, for example, and I want to talk about the company that Jameis is in, and this is. To me, this is crazy because when you look at the odds, I mean, this isn't, I mean, is it biased? Is it not biased? This is Vegas. This is money. This is real. You know what I mean? This isn't like they're taking a poll of head coaches or journalists. This is like people that make odds are coming up with this stuff. And so when you look at like who's on par with like Jameis, for example, he's plus 6,600, plus 6,600 to win the MVP. So you can take it. You can take a futures bet on Jameis to win the MVP at plus 6,600. To give you some perspective of the guys that are near him, Baker Mayfield is lower odds than that. Matt Ryan is plus 6,000. Jameis is plus 6,600. Jared Goff plus 7,500. Carson Wentz plus 7,500. We don't even know where Carson Wentz is going to play next year. They got Jameis in that category, dude. That's crazy. I'll take a flyer on that. You know what I'll definitely take a flyer on? I found Michael Thomas for MVP is plus 30,000. Meaning if you bet $1 for Michael Thomas to win MVP, you win 300. Will you give $1 to Michael Thomas MVP campaign, Chris?
I'd throw $1 on that. I would definitely love to know what the comeback player of the year odds are, because I can't stress this enough about Michael Thomas. What makes him infuriating is what makes him great. And he is going to be, and if he truly means this, and I think he does, his social media activity, they're not all just song lyrics that are coincidences. Like, he knows what he puts out, and when he does it, everything's like calculated. He is super serious about proving to everyone that like he's still the top guy at wide receiver. And as long as he doesn't suffer a setback, and as long as his ankle injury didn't debilitate him to the point where he can't make those violent cuts that he always does, I would be stunned if he doesn't have an elite season, because he's just that type of guy. Like, it doesn't mean the Saints should ignore the wide receiver position, because they've been neglecting that position the last couple of years, but he is that good that I would not be surprised if he's the comeback player of the year next year, as long as he's healthy. Like, I think that the dude is just built different from a mentality standpoint. So would I throw $1 on MVP? Yeah, he probably wouldn't win it because it's a quarterback award, but $1, it's not going to kill me. I've wasted $1 on worse things.
He goes out and catches like 28 touchdown passes has 145 receptions, 2,100 yards.
It's a lot
I
of
don't know.
slants.
Like I always said, it's just it feels like so long ago since Michael Thomas played, or just like was great because his last season, like that last season, he was there for what, like 7 games or whatever. And I was always of the opinion. I remember kind of watching the Saints in like 17, 18, and thinking, if Thomas gets hurt, it's a bigger deal than if Breeze gets hurt right now. And we saw that. We saw like evidence, like Breeze was able to hold it together until Thomas was gone. And once Thomas was gone, it is nighty-night for Breeze. Do you think that's a fair statement, Chris?
I think it's absolutely fair, and that's no knock on Drew Brees. It's just the year that Michael Thomas won Offensive Player of the Year, what he was able to do when Brees went down was nuts. He had a game where he had over 10 catches for 180 yards and a touchdown against the Bucs, and that was with Bridgewater throwing the ball. And if that's not good enough, because I am someone who does like Teddy Bridgewater, I do think he's very limited in terms of what he can do, but I think he's such a great guy that I got nothing but love for him. Michael Thomas, the year that he did get hurt, 2020, he had 2 100-yard receiving games in the limited time he played. Both of them were with Taysom Hill. So he's become to the point where I think he's quarterback proof. I think there were 2 receivers for me that I know are quarterback proof. I know that DeAndre Hopkins is, because I've seen him ball out with guys like TJ Yates. And I think Michael Thomas is right there, because I think Michael Thomas has done it with Taysom Hill. He's done it with Teddy Bridgewater. He's obviously done it with Breeze. And if Jameis Winston's a quarterback next year, he's going to do it with Jameis Winston. Even if Jameis Winston's not the quarterback next year and the Saints, I don't know, draft a guy like Kenny Pickett, guarantee he'll immediately become Kenny Pickett's security blanket. Like I think he's that good. And no, I think you're absolutely right. The 2019 season, maybe even the 2018 season, think about the playoffs. I know they ended up losing, obviously, the Rams, and that one still stings. The game before against the Eagles, Michael Thomas just started taking over, and the Eagles had no answer, and they were just throwing it to him over the middle, nonstop on third down, every crucial situation. The dude just makes plays. And I think a lot of people, it's easy to forget when he misses that much time, but he's still in his prime. And I thought this was a dude who had a fast track to the Hall of Fame before the injury. He could still get there. So I think the world of him. The last 2 years have been really frustrating, but I think that he's going to make a huge difference for this team. And I do agree that Breeze take is accurate.
Look at this past year. You look at the all 22, not even looking at numbers, the lack of separation that the receivers got on like easy route combos. It wasn't like elaborate. It was like easy slants, what have you. There's no separation, short yardage, down the field, anything. So I think you can even see it there more than anything, because he was a security blanket. He would do a quick slant, do a hitch. Quick thing is to get the offense in rhythm and get space. And we had none of that last year for long stretches of games.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. There were so many people. So you have on Twitter, you had like the people who didn't want Jameis to do well when he was playing. And then when he got hurt, you had the people who didn't want Taysom Hill to do well. And they'd be like, oh, why are they holding the ball so long? And I'm like, I can show you just going back and look, these dudes are not getting open. Like, and I feel bad because you had guys that should be wide receiver 3s and 4s being wide receiver 1s and 2s because he went down, but it was bad. And guys who like Callaway, who I really do like Callaway, we kind of got bamboozled in the preseason, like he balled out and then the regular season started, and it's tough to kind of replicate that. But no, you're right. The separation thing. And that's why you guys will see I tweet about once a week why I think the Saints have to get a receiver in this draft fairly early, but we'll kind of see what happens there.
T, did you pull those MVP odds up?
Yeah, what do you need there, Chief?
No, the point I'm trying to get to is I want you to scroll down to where Jameis is. Taysom Hill's MVP odds on the site I looked at today, it was either Barstool or FanDuel, were plus 6,600 as well. Vegas was giving Taysom Hill the same odds to win the MVP as Jameis Winston.
I can't even find a site that goes that deep into the odds. That's how far down he is. Like the farthest I'm getting is Zeke Elliott at plus 15,000. Then it cuts off.
Oh, for the Michael Thomas?
For anything over 15,000, there's not much there.
All right. Anyway, Chris, what do you think? What do you think the Saints' record is going to be next year?
My worst case scenario is probably, and this would be disaster, probably be in that 7-10 range. But I still think this is a 9-8, 10-7 team. I'll lean I'll be a little bit more optimistic today. I kind of think they're a 10-7 ball club. And I look at it like, yeah, they're going to have tough games. They got to play teams like the Bengals next year. And God knows how those games are going to go. Obviously, those games should be definitely fun. But I really don't think highly of this division at all. I think they can, they've been sweeping the Bucs the last couple of years. Now that Brady's gone, that task should only get easier, you would think. And although they did have Brady's number, the Panthers, you guys mentioned Matt Rule before. I'm not a Matt Rule fan at all. I think he's an outstanding college coach. If you go back there, I would do it in a heartbeat if I were him. But
Matt Rule's garbage, bro.
But in the NFL, man,
he pulled some fucking Sopranos shit on old boy the offensive coordinator. Yeah. He's like, fire him, not me. Fire him. That was pretty slick. He bought himself like 8 more games of coaching.
So yeah, I'll go 10-7, and that's kind of because of things like that. Because I think when you play a division, I kind of look at it like this: we make fun of the Cowboys, and rightfully so, that they kind of get like cakewalks throughout the year, and it bolsters their record. I think the Saints, if they play their cards right, they might get lucky in the sense that, okay, we got some easier matchups sprinkled around our schedule. So I kind of like them in that 9-8, 10-7 range. I'll go 10-7, feeling good about them figuring out this quarterback situation, possibly at least bridging it for a year with a guy like Jameis, and I think he would do fine. So I'll go 10 wins.
I agree with you. I feel the same. I feel like that's their floor is 10-7.
I hope so.
So, and then what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have you back on when the win totals come out, because that's the funnest NFL future. Is they're going to say, okay, Vegas is probably going to put the Saints. If I had to guess, I'll go on record as saying now, Vegas is probably going to have the Saints at like 8.5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they're going to challenge you to go 9, or challenge you to go 9 or 7. I mean, I believe it. I believe in this team, especially. I mean, it's kind of tied to who's playing quarterback, and again, I hope it's Jameis. But goodness gracious, that's going to be fun when that happens. All right, so you're 10-7. What you think they're going to do in the draft?
Cesar Ruiz's brother.
Oh, I mean, picks
Cesar Ruiz's brother. Does he have a brother? Is he available in the draft?
He might, but it's not the knowledge to me that I'll have.
I thought that was for real. I thought they're going to draft Cesar Ruiz's brother, bro.
Go 0 for 2 on Ruiz's.
I mean, but picks like that kind of make it harder to figure out where they're going to go. And because now I think they have a bigger hole at right guard than they might have thought. I think the Armstead situation is interesting. If you don't re-sign him, okay, there's some interesting offensive tackles in this draft. Do you go offensive tackle? Do you shore it up with guys like Hurst and Landon Young, who you drafted last year? Not sure. But I think, look, if I were picking, I think that wide receiver would be perfect, because I think a player like Jameson Williams could fall right into their lap. And I know people are worried because he's coming off the torn ACL injury, but I thought he was without a doubt the best wide receiver in this class. I don't think that his ACL injury should change that stance for me. And I think what he does is completely opposite of what a guy like Michael Thomas does, which is great, because I think the last thing you want, and for example, a guy like David Bell from Purdue, he reminds me a lot of Michael Thomas coming out of college. I wouldn't mind another Michael Thomas. That'd be great. But I think if the Saints can get a guy like Jameson Williams who gives them that speed element, and a guy who, let's say Jameis is your quarterback, he can utilize him really well on deep balls, on deep crossing routes, things of that nature, I think he would be perfect for them. I would not rule out the idea of them taking a quarterback, depending how the board falls, because Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett are going to draw a lot of interest, but are they going to draw a lot of interest to make sure that they're gone by the time teams are picking that 10 to 12 range? I'm not so sure about that. So if one starts sliding, maybe the Saints kind of change their stance and they say, okay, we can get a quarterback for today while also getting a quarterback for tomorrow. And I wouldn't absolutely hate that idea either. And then the last thing, and this kind of just depends how the board falls as well here. You can always go defense, and I would never complain. And I know they have a great defense. I'm not saying they should go defense. But if a premier defensive lineman were to fall and they're like, okay, Cam Jordan's getting older, we don't have a great solution at defensive tackle, we'll go D-line, I would be fine with it. But I think receivers should be the answer. I don't trust them to go to receiver, but I think with guys like Jameson Williams, guys like Chris Olave, who said he already met with the Saints, even players like Garrett Wilson, players like Treylon Burks, there are too many receivers to not take one. So if I'm going to, bang on the table and say for one position, that's the one that I kind of hope they attack.
T, where the Saints going in the draft?
I want a flashy pick. I selfishly want a flashy pick just because
You
we've been
don't
deprived
want
of
an
it.
offensive lineman from the Big Ten this year?
Exactly. We've been deprived of fun at the
Or another
draft day.
prototype defensive end, prototype size combine guy?
I want a guy I've never heard of, that no one's ever heard of. Like, he's not even on the draft board. I'm sure it'll go somewhere like that.
We're
I
gonna
don't know.
have
I
we're gonna have
want a fun
draft
pick,
we're gonna have
so-
draft gambling soon. We're gonna have the picks of the draft props. I don't know, Chris, have you ever bet on the NFL draft before?
I have not, but I
Oh.
will say if I'm gonna do it, this is gonna be the year for me to do it.
Yeah, you should do it with us. Will you do it with me? Can I be your guy that you ask questions
I'm
of?
totally down for that.
If you wanna know?
I'll need someone to consult with. So
Yeah, I want to be like your gambling counselor. Be your gambling friend. I want to be everybody's gambling friend. You know what I mean? That's why we do this show. Man, T, do you have any other questions for Chris with us here tonight?
Yeah. So I do have a question about the Jameis thing, because if Jameis, it's a two-part question. One, if Jameis is the quarterback next year, do you think he changes his style of play to not be as aggressive and know how he does the kooky downfield running, because that's how he got hurt? Do you think that would affect his style of play? Do you think he's going to be cautious, or do you think he's just going to be his usual self?
I think it's tough to say because I think it's, you never really know what's going on in a player's mind. And I will say it does affect some guys. Like, I think people kind of forget because it's been a while since that injury happened, but I believe it was 4 years ago, Garoppolo suffered a torn ACL, and people kind of think of Garoppolo as this guy who has terrible footwork and doesn't really move, and he's kind of a statue in the pocket, and he is now. But before that injury, he's actually moving around a little bit. And then after that injury happened, he just stopped doing it because I guess he just didn't feel comfortable. I would imagine for Jameis, he seems a little bit more loose of a personality. I don't know if that should bother him. And I would go as far to say that before he got injured, the fact that Jameis actually lost weight and started looking a little bit more mobile, that changed a lot because he was picking up first downs on those third downs and scrambling situations. And I thought that actually made him a little bit more dangerous of an athlete. And look, he got hurt on a tackle that technically shouldn't have happened. I'm not going to knock Devin White. I think he's an outstanding player, but it technically was a penalty and he was flagged for it. So if that tackle doesn't happen, he probably doesn't get hurt on that particular play. And we're probably not having this conversation. So I would imagine that he doesn't change it. I would say he still scrambles. I would actually hope he gets a little bit more aggressive next year, running and throwing. I think that if Jameis is going to, you guys talk about the MVP stuff and look, him winning MVP, obviously it kind of seems like a pipe dream, but if he's going to have great numbers, I think he has to try and find a balance, because the reason he's stuck in a category with guys like Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff was because he played it super safe last year. And it worked because he kind of shut down the narrative that he can't play quarterback without throwing picks. He only threw 3 of them. But I would love a happy medium. Like, I would take 12 interceptions from Jameis Winston, 13, 14 interceptions from Jameis Winston if it's coming with 30-something touchdowns. Like, I would totally take that because I think you need that explosion. So I hope the ACL injury doesn't kind of change his mindset, because I think what maybe scares us from Jameis also makes Jameis really prolific, and that's his aggressiveness.
Yeah, I want to see him open it up. I want like Tampa Bay Jameis with like half the interceptions.
Oh, that would be great. If you told me he would throw 33 touchdowns and 15 picks, I think the Saints can work with that. I'm sure fans will complain every time he throws that pick, but I think they can absolutely work with it. And I think that the fact that they have a good defense, that makes it easier to kind of compensate for turnovers like that. Obviously, you don't want that 30 or 20 range, but I'm very interested with Jameis. The reason I try to like look in a positive light with that dude is he's a workaholic. Like, I think his work ethic is top tier. And if he's gonna come back from this ACL injury and look really good and maybe show us what we thought he would be coming out of Florida State or anywhere close to it, it's going to be because of that. Like, everyone makes fun of the workout videos because he has those like goofy expressions and whatnot, but the dude is constantly working. So I think that, fingers crossed, we see that the Saints end up bringing him back in a couple weeks.
Jameis MVP props. That's what we're doing. Chris sold me.
Yeah. I'm doing all the Jameis props again this year. I'm going to do Jameis most passing yards, Jameis most touchdowns, Jameis fewest interceptions. If they allow like most Jameis third down conversions to Michael Thomas, I'll do that. Like, I'm ready, dude. I'm ready. I'm primed. I'm gonna get a paper route or something to make extra gambling money. I got one more question for you. In fact, I want to turn this into something we do with all of our guests from here on for maybe the next couple of weeks until the USFL gets here. And Chris, I'm going to ask you if you'd like to play a game. But before I ask you if you'd like to play a game, the rule of this game is you can't use Google you can't use your phone or anything for like the next 60 seconds. You in?
Yeah, sure. I might look like an idiot doing it, but I'm down.
Would you like to play a game? I always got to say that. I'm sorry. Who's going to win the USFL this year? But before you answer, you must name all 8 teams that are playing.
Oh, I got no shot then.
Let's try. I don't want to help.
I know. I don't even remember what New Orleans' team's name is. Something with like a B, right?
All right. I'll just take that New Orleans has a team. So
New Orleans Bees.
New Orleans has a team. Yeah, New Orleans Bees, right? What you got after that? Can you name another one?
No, I probably can't even name you the cities. That's a little.
Oh, just yeah. I mean, I like if you could describe what the logos look like, I'll take that. I just want anything like cities.
Do we got a St. Louis team in there? I wouldn't be surprised. They get anything in there?
So there's a trick. If you guess this one city correct, you knock all 8 out in one fell swoop because they're all playing in Birmingham this year.
Well,
but they do have
Birmingham
teams,
doesn't have,
cities,
but he's trying to trick you because Birmingham doesn't have a team. They just have all of the teams.
Interesting.
All right. So are you tapping out on one? You're tapping out on New Orleans.
I'm probably gonna tap out right there. It was.
You're tapping out after one team.
Yeah. It's like Vontae Davis. I'm retiring at halftime.
If I made you pick who's going to win the USFL this year, then I guess you're forced to say New Orleans.
Oh,
New
yeah.
Orleans Bees, right?
New Orleans Bees. I'm going to put the banner right behind me for them.
Yeah. T will send you one.
Yeah, I got it in with the equipment manager over at the Bees locker room.
Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on. Like I mentioned, I'm a huge fan. I think that you're the best Saints non-traditional media talent, and I don't say that in any kind of way but the top, because I don't believe in legacy media really that much. You know what I mean? So, like, God bless. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate your time. I've been a fan of yours for a long time. Where can everybody find you? You know what, at Rosvoglou Report on Twitter, as if anybody didn't know, right? And then, of course, your podcast here on the network. Was it Straight Up Saints?
Yep.
Anything else you want to plug?
Not really, man. I'll say the last thing real quick. With free agency coming up, the one thing I would advise people, and I almost walk into it because before I finish every show, I'm like, if people, if I didn't answer something that you didn't want me to answer, just hit me up. And I think I made it like an open invitation for people to like just nonstop DM me about questions that I have no idea. So for anyone
retracting that tonight, you're saying that nobody DM me anymore.
No, I'm saying open invitation. People want to DM me, but like the questions that come in sometimes, it's like some dudes are asking me, well, can you convince the Saints to throw this guy some certain amount of money? I'm like, I don't speak to the team. Like, I don't know who's on their free agency board. And like some guy one time hit me up. He's like, yeah, you really need to persuade them to draft this kid. I was like, dude, I don't have Mickey Loomis's phone number on speed dial. Just be like, yeah,
Hey, Mickey, Rosvoglou says you should. Rosvoglou says you should draft this kid because a listener DM'd him.
But yeah, that's especially the offseason, man. You'll see. I'll send some to you guys to see. I think some dude was like, dude, we got to start pushing Drake London on the team. I'm like,
why don't you just put out like 100 articles about Drake London?
What am I supposed what is
he's like the minister of propaganda over here, you know.
You control the entire
send forth a raven to Rosvoglou and let them know that we like the punter back from England. Tell the Falcons to relinquish the rights to the punter. Yeah, the one that rode in the Mardi Gras parades. Let Rosvoglou be the vessel. Thank you so much for coming on. We have a tradition whenever a guest does. We just ask you to say good night to all the beautiful people listening to Taking the Over.
All right. So good night to all the beautiful people listening, Taking the Over.
Thank you so much. Goddamn professional. He did it perfect, T. One
better
try.
Than me.
Better than most. Thank you so much, man. Thank y'all for listening. Don't forget to follow us at Taking the Over on Twitter, at Taking the Over on Instagram, at Taking the Over on TikTok. Follow the feed itself. The pod feed itself is any major podcast app Taking the Over with Billy Gunn, and of course Boot Crew Media. Thank you so much to Royal Honda, shouting out. They got 180 cars. Pff, come on now. Call your mother and tell your mother to go to Royal Honda if you're not going to. Call a friend and tell them to go to Royal Honda. If you're not in the market for Honda, call somebody and tell them they should be. And tell them Gunn sent you. We love you. Have a good night. Hugs, kisses, loves. Bye.